Good morning to all the participants and good morning, Sameer. We have with us our guest today, Mr. Sameer Brij Verma, who is the MD of Nexus Venture Partners. He has been voted as 40 under 40 alternate investment professionals in India by IAAIF. He has been an early stage investor in over 70 startups, including some of the most successful startups in India and abroad. I welcome Sameer on the behalf of SBA Emerging Youth Scholarship and Mentorship Scheme. Our students and mentors are all charged up to hear from you on the basics of entrepreneurship and funding. So Sameer, one of the facts is that our students come from smaller cities and rural areas, and they are now undergoing professional courses in different institutions in Himachal and other parts of the country. How should the students follow their passion and dream of becoming an entrepreneur?
Sure, Ashutosh. Firstly, thank you so much for having me over here. It's great to be here. It's a privilege to be talking to all of you on this nice Sunday morning. And thank you for your kind words. All the credit and all the success for all the stuff that you mentioned goes to the entrepreneurs that I've had the privilege to partner with over the last 15 years as an investor. The credit should go to them. So it's a great question, and I think it's important to step back and think about what entrepreneurship is and kind of define that, right? What is, if you look at it at a high level, what is entrepreneurship? It's the activity, of kind of setting up a business or a couple of businesses for that matter, taking on those financial risks in the hope of profit in some ways. That's in a very simple way what entrepreneurship is. And entrepreneurship takes on many dimensions in many ways, Ashutosh. It's not necessary that it is only about setting up a Flipkart, or it is all setting about building on an academy or a Baidu or some of these companies that you come across on the newspapers. It's about starting something. It could be a tea stall. It could be starting a shop. It could be starting a QSR chain. It could be starting anything, right? Those are all forms of entrepreneurship, and all of them should be respected. Of course, some of these companies have, and lots of the thing to realize about entrepreneurship is that you start small and then you have big dreams and aspirations. You can, it's very possible that these small companies can become large companies, and that has happened time and time again over centuries. Businesses get established, they build out, and they become large companies. In many cases, if they're built well and there are good foundations to those businesses, they last over certain centuries as well. So it's all about your aspirations around what you want to build, how long do you want, what kind of moats you build in your business, how durable you make your business, and what are the foundations for starting that business, and how you keep up with the times that you can build enduring businesses. And I think that's something that we have to kind of think about as it is doing. Obviously, the advantages of starting companies is obviously the kind of impact that you can have. The financial gains is one obvious very thing. It's not there for everybody. It needs to be figured out, and you need to have a business model. You need to be having the ability to make money and all of that stuff, and it has to be a sustainable venture eventually. But what is very important in many ways is for you to think about what your dreams and aspirations are, what is it that you want to build, and try and be the best at what you're trying to do. It could start small. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to kind of conquer the world on day equal to zero. Start small, think, but think big, and think about how you can build that. If you want to start a particular kind of chain or fashion chain, for example, or how do you start small? How do you really understand your customer? How do you really deeply understand the market need that is there? How do you build for that, and how do you scale that? So think about that, and it is very possible in today's time and age to build companies which can be very large, have deep, meaningful impact. I think you're only restrained by your ambition and your vision. And obviously, it's not easy to do this. And we'll delve into it, and I'll give a couple of examples as well as we go about things. in terms of some of the entrepreneurs that I have had the privilege to see from a distance or even work closely with over the years. But an entrepreneurship can come from anywhere. It's not restricted to a large city. It's not restricted to that it's a big city phenomenon. You need to have certain degrees or any of those things. You need to have a deep insight around what you want to build and who you want to build it for and how you're going to go about building that product, service, or any fundamental technology for your end customer market.
Thanks a lot, Sameer. Really very insightful. I'm sure all the students who are listening today and the mentors who are there in this call today, they all will benefit from your presence. One of the very important aspects of success as an entrepreneur is the mindset of an entrepreneur. Now, this is something which comes even before ideation and business planning. However, we have seen that the mindset is something which is not taught in any of the academic institutions, including the premier B schools that we have across, at least in India, I can say. How should the student develop the mindset of an entrepreneur?
When you start a company and you want to build something, the world is unfortunately not a very fair place in many ways. But and you have a lot of things going against you in many ways as well, right? You have competition, you have better funded players in the market. You always have very large companies potentially in those markets which are competing with you. The most important thing that I have at least is just having an immense amount of grit, and that is demonstrated. And when we look at entrepreneurs and we look to fund entrepreneurs at early stages, what we look for are signs of them persevering and having deep amount of grit to kind of go through very difficult circumstances and come out of it. And we look for these traits in their life, right? Taking on difficult things and delivering against those, overcoming all kinds of obstacles, overcoming all kinds of challenges, obstacles, things that come your way when you want something. How do you kind of go about achieving it? So we look for these traits in entrepreneurs before we fund them or when we look to fund them. And it is the biggest thing that is a determinant of success in many ways. Just sheer perseverance and an ability to kind of persevere through very difficult scenarios, because there is no smooth sailing. Today, Google looks like it's a very successful company, but there were times when it just was looking very difficult and they wanted to sell the company for maybe even 0.1% of what it's worth right now, and things were looking very difficult and bleak for them. But it's how they persevered, how they decided to build their company, rally their troops, converge around what their broad vision was, and raise investments, build great products, solve a consumer need. I think that got them there. So I would say grit is number one. The other big quality to have is it's very important to be not tunnel visioned. This is all that you want to do and you will do it. You have to be intellectually honest about what you want and how you're going to go about achieving it. It's important that you are honest to yourself and honest to the people around you, around how you want to build that. You take feedback. If things are not working, you have to constantly change course. It's very, very important to have a lot of agility, to kind of change course when things are not going well for you. And that has to be coupled with strong grit. Those are the two things which I would say are absolutely critical. The third thing I would say is ability to work with teams. How do you magnify your impact? You can do that only if you can potentially, in many ways, bring around people who believe in your vision, whether that is investors, whether it is team members and things like that. Your ability to storytell, your ability to convince people of your vision, and more importantly, to build teams, build people who can come in and really help you in the process is paramount in many ways. So I would say these are the three things: great, deep amount of intellectual honesty, and your ability to sell and build teams and get people converged on your vision, and help you execute on your vision. I think these are the three things which are absolutely critical for entrepreneurs or wannabe entrepreneurs think about at a very high level.
Thank you, Sameer. Really very insightful. We have Hetal with us, who is one of the lead mentors in the program. He has raised hand. He has a question. Hetal, please go
Sure.
ahead.
Hey, hi, Ethel. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Sameer, and pleasure to have you on board. I
Pleasure
think
to be
the
here.
topic of entrepreneurship is very complex, and to hear seasoned folks like you coming on is great. When I mentor entrepreneurs, and especially a lot of them from economically weaker section in the society, there is a strong misconception that it's easy to get funds, and I have an idea, you fund me, right? I mean, it's a very straightforward thing. So a lot of students here also might have that question in their mind. I don't have money. How do I start? Should I, look at a frugal enterprise? Should I wait for some time? And, probably thoughts from your end on this topic would probably help the students a lot.
Sure. I think, when you open the newspapers, you see all these big names of the Flipkarts and the Academies, Byju's and the Zomatos of the world. They all look very glorious. But, I can tell you that each of those entrepreneurs has suffered many, many rejections while raising money. Each of them. It's not been easy for any of them. They all have in many ways struggled to raise money. At some point in their career, and especially when they were starting out and trying to convince and sell their vision to investors. See, as investors, one thing you need to realize is that most of the investors are rejecting companies. 98 or 99% of the time, they're rejecting the companies that they're seeing. It's the 1% of the companies that make the cut. And what is it that investors look for? They look for great founders and teams at early stages who are going after very large markets in many ways, and have a very differentiated approach to cater to them. So those are the three things that what we look for, or mostly all early stage venture firms look for when they are evaluating companies and things like that. In many cases, the definition of the market is not clear for many people. But markets open up when you solve an unmet need. Sometimes it's not even thought of in many ways, or it is not realized, and you can leapfrog that need in many ways. Once you solve it, the market expands. For example, food delivery, a very simple example, was a very, very small market. It was a very, very small market when it got started in 2015, 16, or whatever, I would say 2015, 16 time frame when Swiggy started, for example. It wasn't clear that how big is the food delivery market, but it was an unmet need from customers. And if there was a way to kind of solve for that in a scalable way, in a consistent way, that market opened up. And today, both the Swiggies and Zomatos of the world do millions of orders a day. So that market has opened up. But I know for a fact that, how difficult it was for the Swiggy founder to kind of raise money in the beginning. He had to kind of sell a vision of how this market would develop, how it had developed, had worked in other markets in the world, and how he was able to kind of build on that. That's very important. I think one thing to realize is that the markets, the venture capital markets or investor markets, are very meritocratic. It doesn't matter which college you went to. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter which city you're from. It doesn't matter what religion you're from. It doesn't matter. All that, at least I can tell you for myself, is that all that we care for is the person deeply driven and passionate about what they want to build. Are they intellectually honest? Can they persevere? Can they build teams around it? Can they sell the vision? And if they do deliver against it, is the price large enough? I think those are the things that we really look for, and mostly I can speak broadly, investors look for. And you should never think about things like I'm from a backward. Today, in today's time and age, knowledge is disseminated. The internet is the internet is the greatest democratizer of knowledge, and nothing stops you. I mean, absolutely nothing stops you from taking on an unmet need, having a deep insight into a problem and solving it, and potentially, if you want, raising money around it and going from there. Now, as I said, all big things start small, all of them. So it's while you want to have grandiose visions, the key thing is, does your business work? Will the unit economics in your business work? Those are the things that you kind of need to answer and communicate and sell to investors and sell to your team that, if we build this, this is how the business will work. These will be the economics around it. This is how a business can be created. This is how a sustaining large business can be created. And this is how our execution plan should be. And we will learn along the way. But this is the intellectual framework that we're going to put on top of the business that we're building, that we can constantly keep iterating. Every business iterates. A business, I can tell you, at least I've had the fortune to partner with about 75 entrepreneurs to date. I can tell you, other than one, 74 of them have changed and evolved as we funded them. So, it's extremely important to understand that it's not that I started doing one thing and that's how the business would be. Every business evolves and changes. Swiggy, when I remember when it came to pitch to me, I had a conflicting investment at that point of time. They wanted to do business to business deliveries. They did not want to do consumer food ordering. So the business evolved in 3 months or 4 months to being a consumer food ordering app. So it evolved in 3 months, and from there on, it's evolved to many things. It's evolved to being a cloud kitchen company. It's evolved to being doing a bunch of things. It's dine in, dine out kind of experiences, order at home experiences. So every company evolves. It doesn't take one shape only. Microsoft has evolved multiple times. Google has now multiple lines of business. Started with search. When it started off with search, they just were doing the search piece very well. But they figured out that the monetization models would be ads. That was actually 1.5, 2 years into the company, and there was an existential crisis at that point of time. The founders didn't know that they built the best search engine, or one of the best search engines at that point of time, but it wasn't clear how that company would make money. But the breakthrough idea was Google Ads. How do they do ads? And then that built a strong engine for them to build a monetization engine. So as I said, just absolutely having do not believe even for a second that you can't do anything. And that's the defeatist mindset is your biggest enemy. It's not venture investors, it's not markets, it's not anything else. The biggest thing that you need to realize is that in today's time and age, anyone, absolutely anyone can build companies and take them on. The Swiggy, even after getting to a very large stage, we have in our portfolio a 19-year-old Stanford dropout who is building Zepto and has built a team now, which is now challenging Swiggy in one of its lines of businesses. So, age no bar, college degree no bar. It's all about how you take things on and disrupt them. And, in many cases, just to be completely honest, we, for example, have just funded, it's not announced yet, just giving you an example, a person who never went to college. He dropped out from school at 16 and, is been working in AI, artificial intelligence for the last 3 years, has been funding himself, keeping himself going, writing code for other people, and has built a company that we just funded. It didn't matter which college he went to. It didn't matter where his family came from. It didn't matter what he had studied. All that mattered was how much he knew the problem, how well he understood the market, and what his vision was, and the fact that he could build a team around him to deliver on that vision. And if he won, and if he was successful in what he was doing, he would be able to kind of build a large company. So those are just live examples: a 19-year-old dropout, a 16-year-old child, that we've had the privilege to fund. And that's what, so it's a very long answer to your question, Ethel, but I just wanted to give some more color in terms of real examples of which, we're just not talking that, we're talking, walking the talk in many ways of funding some of these companies and partnering with entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, thanks, Sameer. No, anecdotes like these are gems of wisdom. Thanks.
So Sameer, I think your answer leads me to this very interesting question. When it comes to entrepreneurship, you see some people getting serious success, one after other. We are building new companies and they're becoming successful. And on the other hand, there are people who are struggling with everything that they're trying to do. What is it that differentiates between those who achieve this serious success as an entrepreneur with those who are not able to succeed?
I think the people who are able to succeed continuously evolve themselves a lot. They evolve to markets. They are a lot more agile mentally. They just are take feedback really fast. They understand what the unmet need is, and they constantly evolve their businesses. And goes without saying, they have immense amount of perseverance. I talked about grit and intellectual honesty and ability to build teams. No single person can build a company. Even Elon Musk is one of the greatest entrepreneurs in our generation, and maybe in the last 200 years. But he is not building Tesla alone. He has got people that that he hires. So I would say it goes back to the same three things: immense amount of grit, immense amount of intellectual honesty and ability to understand what's going on and understand what the challenges are, and why, what is working, what is not working, constantly evolve the product, and then being able to build a team which will support you in that direction. Today, people who work for Elon Musk often work 17 hours. I'm sure you must be reading in the newspaper. He's taken over Twitter, and he let go of a large part of the staff, and the remaining staff that remains, 20-25% of the staff remains. He's like, let's convert the culture to being hardcore. Let's work 17 hours a day. That kind of hard charging, visionary leadership, and in many ways, very tough leadership, is what lets Elon Musk kind of deliver on his vision towards what he wants. And then there are people who self-select whether I want to be a part of it or drop out of it and quit my job, because I can't work 17 hours. I'm used to working a 7 to 8, 9 to 5 job. There are people who do that, but it's the leader of these companies who decides how am I going to be building these companies and what is the kind of culture that I want to create. So these are the things. People who generally are not successful in startups generally are really good at grit in many ways, because they constantly keep trying, they keep persevering, but they might not be intellectually honest about what the problem in the issue, what is the problem. They're stubborn about, okay, this will work, this will work, this will work. They're not constantly iterating. They're not constantly experimenting. They're not constantly saying, okay, what do I need to change to make this work? What maybe I need to change my approach. They don't. There's a lot of conformity across entrepreneurs who generally fail. The other thing is generally they hire people around them who are not very strong in caliber. They hire people who just want to listen to them and don't challenge their thought process. They don't push the boundaries. I think those are the two things that really lead to kind of people not building large companies or building enduring large companies. Grit, intellectual honesty, and ability to build teams. It goes back to these three things pretty much.
Thank you, Sameer. Our mentors, do you have any question? Mentors or students, you can raise hand and ask question to Sameer. I have a few more questions, but if you want to ask a question here, this is the time. I think we have a raised hand. Rajesh. Yeah, Rajesh, please go ahead.
Hey, Rajesh, I think you're on mute. We can't hear.
The voice is not audible, Rajesh. Can you send the question in the chat? If you are on mute, I think.
Rajesh, I think you have we can't hear you. Maybe you can ask the question in chat. I'd love to answer your question.
Just write in the chat. Meanwhile, anybody else has any questions with Sameer? Okay. So Sameer, I have a question for you. Meanwhile,
Sure.
Before he's writing the question, I think you already talked about some of the traits of successful entrepreneurs and what makes them different from others. Especially looking at students who are starting with smaller setups, and then they are looking for possibly at some stage for investment. When you are still investing in the early stage startups, what are the parameters that are most important for you to decide on investment?
Sure. No, it's a very relevant question. I think so think about what I'll just step back and tell you a little bit about when you go to investors, what are they generally looking for? And there are all kinds of investors in the ecosystem, right? Really, when you start out, there might be angel investors. These are individual investors who are writing out checks, right? These are, you know, high net worth individuals. Could be a friend, could be a family who are writing out your first check in many ways, right? To your company. They like believe in you. They know you, or they just figure out, oh, this is a smart guy. He writes really well, good code, and इसमें पैसे लगा देते हैं. Sort of there are that category. When you move towards the right, when you have fund, like we are a venture capital firm, we go and raise money from large institutions, large endowments, large pension funds, large corporates. We pool in that money, right? And we sit in between and then look at all kinds of businesses to put money into, right? Our fiduciary responsibility is to make money for our investors, which are these what we term as LPs or our limited partners, as we term them in our fund. Our job is to look at entrepreneurs who can build sizable and large companies, right? That's a very large and very important criteria for institutional, when you want to raise institutional money, when you want to raise money from funds, right? These large funds or even smaller funds. All of us have a duty to take the money that we pooled into our fund, like mutual fund managers, and there are all kinds of proxies to understand this business. We pool in that money. From this pool of capital, we are going to be investing into maybe in one particular fund, we'll be investing into about 20 of these companies. Our focus when we look at an entrepreneur, somebody who walks into the thing, is everybody has an idea, everybody is very rosy-eyed, everybody thinks that, everything will be great. Our job is to say no 99% of the time to these companies and say that this doesn't make sense for us, right? And our job is to say yes 1% of the time, right? And be right in that 1%, right? It's I'm simplifying it at a very, very high level. Our job is to make sure that we are able to find that diamond in the rough in many ways, who's an exceptional individual, right? And exceptionalism is not defined by you going to Stanford. Exceptionalism is not defined by you being from IITs. Exceptionalism is defined by you having the characteristics of being somebody who's been exceptional in many ways throughout your lives. You maybe started coding when you were 8, or you started coding when you were 12 years old, and you've been building products. You started making pocket money when you in the 8th, 9th class, writing systems and writing code and building apps for people, because you didn't take to convention that this is how it needs to be done. We look for these kind of traits. We look for these really, people who don't fit the mold in many ways, because the greatest entrepreneurs don't fit the mold, right? The greatest entrepreneur, one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, Steve Jobs, right? He was, for example, in design. He is not even a technologist, and he built the most wonderful technology company, one of the most wonderful technology companies, Apple, in the world. How does that happen? Because he was exceptional in terms of how he understood consumer needs, how he understood the vision of what people need, not what people want. He understood what is it that people need, how can I build for that, how can I build this most beautiful piece of technology that people love interacting with. And this technology is very simple to use, but yet complicated. It hides all the complexity behind it, but it is beautiful to use. And everything that they built was beautiful to use, easy to use, hiding away all the complexity. He was not an engineer, but he understood this really well. He could rally and sell the vision really well. He could do all of those things well. So we look for traits like this in entrepreneurs, that, can this person be exceptional? Is he breaking away from the mold? Does he really understand the problem that he's solving? Does he understand the unmet need in the market? Does he have deep insights into that, what is not there today? Does he understand the landscape? Does he understand why he will win? Or how will he need to evolve to win? So, and can he build the team? It goes back to these same 3 or 4 things. So this is what we look for. And this is what all institutional funds look for when they're funding companies. They need to invest into companies which get to a certain size and scale. That's the institutional part. Now, everybody doesn't need to go to an investor in the beginning. You can start your business small. You can get it to a certain size and scale, and then raise money to expand your business. You can build your own software product company today. 3 or 4 people can get together in a room, build their own product company, and start distribute the product, software product, write blogs, write about what they're building, build mind share in the communities, and basically get the word out. People start using it, they start making some bit of revenue. Then you go to investors. So, it's not necessary that the moment you start a company, you go to an investor. You can go a little later also, but you need to find 2 or 3 people, or maybe 1 or 2 people, in fact, just who work with you. Bring in a co-founder who complements you, right? We look for teams, we look for founding teams which are complementary in nature, which means this guy is really good at technology and business in some ways and understands the product well. This guy can code and build them. He can write the software for it, or he can execute things on the ground. This person can execute everything on the web. For example, he can build out the front end, he can build out the catalog, he can build out the commerce platform, but this guy can build all the ops on the ground, right? So, and there might be one person on just technology, right? So we look for complementary founding teams, ideally, right? So when you start building a thing, do a very intellectual, honest assessment about yourself in terms of what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and try and bring in people which complement your weaknesses. Take away those weaknesses. If I'm not very good at business, who is the smartest person I know that I could bring in, who would understand, loves the idea, loves what I'm doing, and can build the business. Can really complement me on the business. So that's what I would say. We look for complementary founding teams when you're doing this, and I would advise. Entrepreneurship is a very, very tough journey. All the glory you see in the newspapers, that's only the 1% or 2% of the companies that have made it there. 97, 98% of those companies don't get there. And they don't get there because they don't have the aspiration set to get there. Maybe in some cases, they haven't built the capability set in the companies to get there, right? So not everybody will get there. And and many companies and many businesses fail. They just fail to not scale up. They just fail not to build a profitable model. So it's very important to understand that in this tough, arduous journey of entrepreneurship, it's not going to be easy. Having 1 or 2 people who can be part of this with you in that journey is an absolutely brilliant thing, but that you can share the load. When you feel low and down, maybe your co-founder will pick you up and say, "Hey, don't worry, let's go try something else. Let's change direction. Let's pivot away into doing something. Let's look at the problem this way. We've been looking at it maybe the whole time. Let's change direction and do it in a different way. Maybe then we will be successful." So you having 2 or 3 voices who are core, who are tied to the vision, who are tied to the joint success, who are co-founders, who own maybe equal amounts of shares in the company, are a very, very good thing to have. One founder, generally we've seen very rarely do one founder companies do really well. I would say in many ways, Elon Musk and Steve Jobs are exceptions. But most of the other companies, if you see, even if you're Microsoft, or if you look at a Google or any of the other companies, mostly there have been 2 or 3 co-founders which took the company to a certain level, and then maybe one co-founder says, "Hey, I'm going to retire now. I've made my money. I think I've made a company get to a certain size and scale. We should hire and bring in a professional person to lead that particular function, or lead technology, lead business, lead sales, lead finance." So that's what generally happens. So we are really looking for that. When you dream about your next company, think about the team, deeply think about the insight in the market, be able to crystallize and sell what is the problem that you want to solve. Why is that an unmet need in the market? Or if it is not an unmet need, how will your company and your technology and your platform be 10x better than anything else in the ecosystem? So, I think it's very, very important to be able to articulate that. It's very important to be able to articulate how you're going to be able to bring in other people also to join your vision, and that's important. And go to the investors at the right time. You should not go to the investors just selling a story, unless you have deep skill set or a history of delivering something. There are many repeat entrepreneurs who come out, who built a company, sold a company. Like I'm looking at an entrepreneur right now who built a company, taken a company public, has built a company, is profitable. He's coming out and starting his next company. The questions for him will be relatively lower because he knows the journey. He knows the arduous journey that he has gone through to build that company, right? So he would have less number of questions. But somebody who has nothing, it's in many ways they have to come extremely well prepared. Even this gentleman is so well prepared, despite having taken a company public, built a profitable, very large company. He's so well prepared because he realizes that he needs to be well prepared to be able to articulate his vision, articulate why he wants to be doing this, and what is his right to win. So I think that is something that you have to be very, very cognizant of and very well prepared for. This is a journey where you need to be well prepared, and you have to constantly keep iterating. So you have to have a very agile mindset when you're building a company.
Thank you, Sameer. I would say that the students who are joined today are very lucky to hear these words from you, because this, in the long run, whenever they start their entrepreneurial journey, it is going to be immensely beneficial to them. So Ashok has sent this question on the chat directly. His question is, and I think you have answered it partially, but still I'll read it out. What is the right time to work on the startup idea or become an entrepreneur? Because many people have ideas, but they want to support their family by money, so they started to work. So this is the question that he has.
It's a great question. I think it's never too early to be an entrepreneur. That's what I would say. That's fundamentally the thing. But you also have to be responsible as children, and everybody has responsibilities in the world. Entrepreneurship is, from the outside looks very glorious, but it is a very difficult journey. It's important, and I know a lot of founders who get to a certain size and stage, have a little bit of savings, have enough to kind of put aside in many ways, that they can essentially have, their parents, their family, medical emergencies, some of those things, some of the basic things are taken care of in life. It's not that they have immense amount of wealth and then they're starting getting to be entrepreneurs, but a lot of them have the basics covered. So we see a lot of people, even at 27, 28, even in some cases 30s, early 30s, leaving the jobs, having put enough of money aside. That's the rare case. If anything happens, they can take care of the family in some ways, or they have a spouse which is working in many ways. There are all kinds of these things. It's never too early to start a company, but be responsible to the people around you, because it's not that entrepreneurship will pay you on T equal to 0. It's not necessary that it will happen. It might be necessary that even if you have a business, like let's say you start a tea stall, it might start generating money on day equal 0. But if you want to just build one tea stall, then you're okay, because you pay for it, you get your initial investments out. Everything beyond that is potentially profits, so you can be happy. But let's say you want to build multiple tea stalls. You want to build a chain of tea stalls. You want to have lots of them in the same city, maybe in different cities. Then what do? Then basically you have to step back and say, okay, I'll take the saving, then I'll put and buy the next one. Then that gets to a certain size and scale, and then I'll, two tea stalls will then fund the third tea stall, and like that you build a chain of these kind of small tea stalls, right? But in that thing, you're delaying your gratification, you're delaying your ability to make money at that point of time, and that in that phase you have to have some bit of cash reserve, or in some ways you raise money institutionally. That's when people come to us. Hey, we can build a great tea stall. I'm giving a very simplistic example, a very, very simple example. Not that we invest into tea stalls, but I've done something in the space, in the coffee space, for example. So I built this great coffee shop. I want to now expand and build a chain of coffee shops. I want to be the Indian Starbucks. And I can do it, but my time to kind of get it from one location to the next location, it might take time. It might my vision is to build the largest coffee shop chain in 6 years in the country, and I want to be in 300 locations. But if I keep doing this one by one, then it'll take me 15 years or 20 years to do this, because by the time a store takes 7 to 8 months to get to profitability, or 9 months to get to profitability, then it'll start taking in money. Then I can invest into the third. It needs to stabilize. So all those kind of things. So they come to us and say, hey, can you give us some money? We can step back and open up we can open up 15 shops at one go, and let those shops open up, and we can set them up in 15 locations. But I have one great shop working. They have to showcase that they can build a tea shop, right? Or a coffee shop. And hey, I built this. This is great. Now I need to replicate this. And I'm coming to you. Instead of doing this over 3 years, I can do this in 6 to 9 months. Please give me this much money. And that's when they come to us as institutions. And we say, okay, this makes sense. You've run a great thing here. You understand the formula. You can replicate it in different locations. And here's a certain amount of money. Go open up 15 shops. And then let's get this first few 15 shops to be at a certain size and scale and profitability over the next 1.5 years. And then we'll go out there and we will raise more money and expand this from 15 to 50 or 15 to 75. And by that time, what are the things that we need to figure out? That all these shops start making profit in 8 to 9 months. That's the whole reason people come to us and say, we want to scale faster. We want to step back. We don't want to do this 1 shop to 2 shop to 3 shops in 2-3 years. We want to accelerate our timeline. And what we look for is the ability of the entrepreneur to understand the market, understand what he's built. Is that scalable? What he's got behind the scenes, is that scalable? And if you scale it from one place to the other, will the demand be the same? And is there a brand which is getting created in the consumer's mind that when I want to have coffee, I will go and have coffee at this place, or I will have chai at this place? I've used a tea stall example and a coffee shop example to really simplify, but it gives you the ability to think about why people come to us to raise money. And why would you raise money from institutions or investors to scale your business up faster? It's not that you cannot build this on your own. The timelines would be a little longer, which is okay. And not everybody needs to get funded, but it's what your aspiration set is. What is it that you want to do? So that's important to think about. And remember that you need to be responsible to those around you before you become an entrepreneur in many ways. Just don't rush into it unless you have, because you might not have money, you might not be able to travel too much, you might not be able to, spend on your on your wedding, you might not have holidays, you might not have all the coolest laptops and things like that, you might not have the best phone, but you're delaying your immediate gratification for long-term gratification. But be responsible to the people around you in your family, that you get your family to a level at least where the basics are covered and you have some bit of cash saved up, so that in case your family, anybody falls sick or whatever, you have a couple of lakhs, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, whatever that number is, saved up, so that you can cater to that and you can just focus on doing this and keep your requirements to be very low and simple in many ways, as you build this out. And at the right time, when you feel confident that you've built your business and you've understood what you want to build, try and convince others. If you want to scale up faster, come to investors like us or others to raise money, to fuel your dreams and scale them faster.
Thank you, Sameer. Really practical information that our students can use. I'm sure so many of our students have been discussing with us that they want to go for entrepreneurship at some stage. Every word that you have mentioned today, I think it's like it'll be immensely beneficial to all of them. One of the questions that Rajesh has, Sameer, one of our students, Rajesh, he has mentioned, and again, you have partially answered this question, but again, I'll repeat it. How to balance between founders' vision and investors' expectation?
It's a good question, Rajesh. I think firstly, you should not take money from an investor if they don't believe in your vision, because that's the first sign of an area where you can get dissonance. Now, it's very important before the financing broadly to get aligned with your investors around what you both want. You want to build, I'm again going back to the tea shop thing, you want to build a 300 store chain uh, in 3 years, let's say, and a 300 coffee shop chain. I'm using very simple example, please, but try and take the learnings from it. You're using getting to a 300 thing, and he wants you to get to 300 in 6 months, and he's giving you the money. But the important part here to think about is your business ready to get to 300 stores in 6 months? Is that even aligned, right? So it's very important that you both converge on the vision even before you take the money. Obviously, once you take the money, you broadly execute on it and you keep converging on the investor vision and your vision. And the investor is going to not push you to do things. The investor is not running the company. The investors trust the founders to run the company. You need to pick an investor who is mature, who understands where you're coming from, and understands that maybe the third or fourth coffee shop, there might be something which might not be working, and the fifth and sixth and seventh might be loss making. And at that point of time, you need to stop and say, okay, I need to think about why are my coffee shops not working? And maybe the last three coffee shops that I opened, they're not working. We need to go back to the drawing board and change our proposition. Maybe it worked in a particular region of the city, or it maybe just worked in Bangalore, but it's not working in Mysore. Okay, what do we need to think about? So a mature, thoughtful investor along with you will go back to the drawing board and say, okay, let's tweak the plans a little bit before we expand into things, or we segment the markets in different ways. Okay, Mysore is a different kind of a city. Maybe Hubli is another different kind of a city, and maybe we need to change our offering for these three types of markets: Tier A city, Tier B city, Tier C city. This is what our playbook should look like. In Tier B cities, we go with a different kind of a format, different kind of price points, different kind of products, and different areas where we start these coffee shops. So it might be different, and that might, it's not that the investor says, "Oh, just open up 300." It might all just come crumbling down. You have to be thoughtful in terms of your execution. The biggest dissonance I've seen with investors is when investors just think everything can scale, or both the founders think everything can scale, and unfortunately it doesn't work like that. And you have to go back to the basics and then rebuild from scratch or change things around the way, and that change is very painful. So it's important that you converge on the vision, you break the bigger problem or your bigger vision into smaller chunks, and you deliver against those chunks into like, okay, 10 coffee shops, milestone one. So, give it 2 months, see how the numbers are trending. Okay, now the next lot of 5 coffee shops, then the next 5 coffee shops, then the next 5 coffee shops. So you break down that vision. The path from 0 to 300 is not jumping from 0 to 300. There are many small points in between. You have to kind of step back and make sure that each of those points you're being tangible and you're delivering against those, and you're building a sustainable business. You don't build businesses for your investors. You eventually build the business for being a profitable, self-sustaining entity. The whole idea should be that, and any investor who sees that a good, sustainable, profitable, strong business is being built will be supportive. When they see a loss-making business which is not doing well and is just destroying investor wealth, that's when you really have deep issues with your investors.
One of our mentors, Malini ji, has a question. Malini ji, can you go ahead?
Yes.
Hi, Malini.
Yes. Good morning. My question here is, could you please elaborate on the term intellectual honesty from the context of students so they can understand this term and grow in this area of thinking?
Sure. Intellectual honesty is when you see reality. You have a vision and reality is something, right? Your job is to make reality and the vision converge in the future, right? that that is a great company. Like that is when greatness is achieved in some shape and form. That's when you as an entrepreneur will be supremely happy that I envision that I will build the largest auto company in the country, and I've executed as per and made reality that in the future, right? That's when Elon Musk's vision was that he'll be the largest EV manufacturer and the largest auto company in the world someday. He's one of the largest EV manufacturers today, but someday potentially he can be the largest auto company in the world. So that is his vision becoming reality, right? But in that process, there could be many pitfalls. You might just go hammer and tongs and think that okay, this is going to be achieved come what may. When I say intellectual honesty, it means that you are very aware of the reality. You don't lose track of the vision. You're very aware of the reality, the market scenario, the nuances around it, and you constantly evolve the business because you are listening to your customer, you're listening to your investors, you're listening to the public markets, you're listening to your banks, you're listening to all of those people, and you're assimilating everybody's feedback to understand very deeply, are you on the right track? Are you building to meet your vision in the future? Are you doing that or not? If you're not, then basically you lost touch with reality. You just think everything will happen because that. Elon Musk, though he might come across as a visionary, he's a deep realist. He knows that the business will not survive. He came close to death multiple times in his company when he was starting Tesla, when he was starting SpaceX. He was down to zero, very, very little money. He was down to 3 days away from bankruptcy in Tesla's journey. But he always listened. He was intellectually honest. He understood. He got up, smelled the coffee. Oh God, this is going to go under if I don't make certain changes. And that happens by a founder building an intellectually honest framework where they listen to what the feedbacks are, what reality is, and then being able to assimilate and work on it. That's what I mean by an intellectual honesty framework. And it is absolutely imperative that you don't lose touch with reality, because sometimes as a founder you assemble a bunch of people under you who all want to give you good news, and they're going ahead and executing certain things under you, and they only give you good news, and you don't realize there's something off till it's too late. We've seen that situation play out as well. But a founder should know to be able to cut through all the noise and say, okay, this is what is really happening here. And okay, if this happens, this can really destroy my business. So I need to change track. And my investors telling me, the markets are really bad. It's very difficult for you to raise money. So you should cut down the amount of money that you're spending so that, you give yourself more time, and you whatever cash balance you have in the bank, you can run your company a little bit more longer, and you can solve the problems and do it more fundamentally so that you're more profitable as a company, even if it means degrowing your company. But you don't lose track of your long-term vision, but you make small steps and changes at that point of time. The biggest issues that we've seen with founders are they lose touch with reality. They just think that everything is great, and their vision is very big. It's what happened, for example, in the case of Vivo. You might have heard about it. The founder lost touch with reality. He just thought about a vision and thought that everything will execute. In the beginning, he was executing well, and then he just started scaling things without really taking anything into cognizance, any of those aspects into cognizance around how profitable each WeWork center is, how profitable the business is, when will they break even. He just lost track of that. And ultimately, the company raised $8-10 billion. It's now valued at $4 billion. It's been a net loss contributor in terms of capital for all its investors. So that just gives you an example of an entrepreneur who's great in many ways, but just got strayed and didn't think about reality and wasn't intellectually honest about what the challenges in the business was just got so carried away, didn't listen to anybody, that the business resulted in where it was, and losses for investors, and he ended up getting fired as well from the company by the board. So that's an example, just to give you an example as well.
Thank you, sir. Very, very well explained this. Basically, to be flexible in your thinking and to be willing to change course and to be able to take feedback from environment, different aspects of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and to be grounded in reality, most importantly. To be
Yes, to be
grounded in
grounded.
reality while not losing focus of your vision, but having the ability to make reality your vision.
Thank you very much, sir.
So, last question for today, Sameer. A student has asked the question, and I'll club my own question in with that. The student's question is, if we have a plan, how does one approach a venture capitalist or angel investor? My addition to that will be, how do they do it at the small scale? For example, sandbox exercises or at the local level, so that they have a proven business formula that they can present to the angel investors and venture capitalists, and then get some success in terms of getting funding and starting from there.
Sure. I think the most important thing is, rather than raising money, you have to convince yourself, most importantly in the beginning, that can you build this? So it depends on what you're doing, right? If you're absolutely starting from scratch and I'm going to build a coffee shop, a lot of people have that idea. Why would you win? What is your ability to build that coffee shop? Why would I not fund the CEO of Starbucks India who wants to build a coffee shop chain? For example, right? When you have nothing to prove, I'll rather invest into somebody who's done this before, right? But if you come to me and say that I have built a coffee shop, put all my sweat and tears into this coffee shop, and this is what I built, or this is the product that I've built, this is a software that I've built with my own hard work, a prototype of that, and you can convince any of the investors, whether it's large institutional funds like us, whether it is smaller angel funds, whether it is HNIs, whether it is your friends and family. Friends and family, I would say, are a thing. But if you can convince any external person for them to believe that, can you do it? It's also important for you to believe that you can do it, and you to prove to yourself that you can build a prototype or a mechanic whereby some small unit of that is working. And then going out there, so having a working product is really helpful. Obviously, you need to be able to kind of articulate your vision on a piece of paper. Now, that could be in a presentation, it could be in a note, but it is very clearly outlining what is it that you're trying to do, why is it that you will be successful in doing it, how aware are you of the competition, how aware are you of the unmet need in the market, and how are you best positioned? How is your company best positioned via your product or service to meet that unmet need, and how you will scale to be a leader in that space? Nobody wants to fund the 10th or 15th biggest coffee chain in the country. Everybody wants to fund the first, second, or third largest company in any segment. So the question is, how do you become the largest in that space? How do you take on Starbucks? How do you take on PowerPoint? How do you take on Chayo, for example? How do you take on Blue Tokai? How do you take on some of these guys? Now, what is the kind of product and service mix that you will build, which is meeting an unmet need? So being able to articulate that on a piece of paper, on a presentation, or on a piece of paper, and when you meet your potential investor, potential investors when you meet potential investors, being able to articulate that vision very, very, very clearly, and showing some kind of success story, that is very, very important before you go out there. Why would otherwise people will always believe that somebody who's done something in the past can disrupt a space because he understands, okay, why does Starbucks need to be disrupted? What is wrong with the Starbucks model that nobody else would do? Again, I'm using very simple examples. For example, in the case of Postman, a company that we funded, the founder of the company was a bit Salem. He built a company. Previous company didn't work, unfortunately. So in many ways, theoretically, he was not a very successful entrepreneur. But he went out there while he never had a job in his life. His previous company hadn't worked. He was developing websites for a living and taking all the money that he earned and coding away and building a product called Postman, which is now it is the largest software company out of India, product software company funded software company out of India. This person was sitting in his room building a tool which he put out there. He got people to start using it. He had 300, 400,000 people using his software for free. And that was the first time that he met us. And, it was very convincing meeting him because his vision, his articulation of why it would happen, he had very clearly outlined his thoughts. More importantly, he built a prototype around what could work. He had shown that, this could get traction. This had people using the platform, using the software. And he showed a very clear vision as to how this could evolve. That company went from 300,000 users to now having 24, 25 million users, right? Then we had the privilege to fund him through that journey. But this was one person who was not a successful entrepreneur, never had a job. He was 23, 24 years old, was subsistence and living out of developing websites for a living and doing third-party work and moonlighting and building a software when he was not working, and showed up to the first pitch with me in Chappals. It didn't matter what he had built, his vision, and how smart he was what mattered. And I think that's what is important. Do not think that this is you need to do all. You need to have everything going for yourself. The most important thing you have going for yourself is your ability to really convince somebody what you're working on will change the world. And that's what is something that you want to convince people on. Everybody, whether it's your co-founder, whether it is your employee who has to join you, whether it's an investor who has to join you. Every time as a founder, you're selling your vision, you're selling your ability to deliver against that vision. And I think it's very important to articulate that very clearly for all stakeholders. That's what we look for. It doesn't have to be a fancy presentation. In many cases, when I decided to fund Postman, for example, the first pitch that he came to, I only did a product demo. And I told him on the spot that we will invest. He only built a presentation much later. The best investments that I've done, they don't even have a presentation. They have a working prototype on a product, right? That's how it works. When I funded an academy in the beginning, they didn't even have a presentation. He came, we sat down on a whiteboard, and he did things. When I funded Paytm, the founder and I sat down for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and we chatted about the business and what his vision was and what he wanted to do. What he was doing at that point of time was very different from what he wanted to do. His business changed over a period of time. This was in 2009, right? So that's giving you an example of how every company changes, but what doesn't change is what is the most paramount thing is the founder and the team that they build together to change that space.
Thanks a lot. It was really insightful session. As Sameer imparted the practical knowledge and understanding of how our students can travel the entrepreneurship journey. I'm sure all our students benefited immensely from it. We are really thankful and our sincere gratitude to you, Sameer, on the behalf of SBA Emerging Youth Scholarship and Mentorship Scheme. And looking forward to this kind of interaction again in future.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Thank you so much for having me over. It was great I hope you found it useful. And sorry, it's very, I do some of these things. I never do it generally for younger students. So it's so great to see 60 people showing up and wanting to learn about this. I'm very hopeful. It gives me a lot of happiness that, you are the future entrepreneurs who will take the country forward in whatever you do. So, start dreaming and start building to making it a reality. I think this is the best way to change the country. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the very best. Thanks. Take care. Bye. Bye.